The fluorescent lights of Terminal B cast harsh shadows across the polished floor as Simone Crawford adjusted her purse strap over her 6-month pregnant belly. She had driven 4 hours to surprise her husband Oliver at the airport, knowing he was returning from his business trip to Miami. The baby kicked softly against her ribs as she walked toward gate 15, her heart racing with excitement. She couldn't wait to see his face when she showed up unexpectedly. But nothing could have prepared her for what she saw next. There, near the departure lounge, stood her husband of 3 years in a passionate embrace with a tall, blonde woman. Oliver's hands roamed freely over the woman's back as they kissed deeply, completely oblivious to the world around them. The woman wore a designer dress that probably cost more than Simone's monthly grocery budget, and her perfectly manicured nails dug into Oliver's expensive suit jacket. Simone's world stopped spinning. The sounds of the busy airport faded to a dull hum as she watched her husband, the father of her unborn child, whisper something into the blonde woman's ear that made her throw her head back and laugh. The laugh was musical, carefree, and cut through Simone's heart like a blade. Her legs felt weak and she gripped the nearest chair for support. The baby seemed to sense her distress and began moving restlessly inside her belly. Simone's breathing became shallow as she watched Oliver pull out his phone and show the woman something on the screen. They both laughed again, and the woman playfully hit his arm in the way that lovers do. "This can't be happening," Simone whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the airport noise. "This can't be real." But it was real. Her husband, the man who had held her hair back during morning sickness, who had promised to love and cherish her forever, was cheating on her while she carried his child. The wedding ring on his finger caught the airport lights as he stroked the woman's cheek tenderly. Simone's mind raced back to all the business trips he'd taken recently. The late-night phone calls he'd stepped outside to take. The way he'd become distant and distracted at home. The expensive purchases on their credit card that he'd brushed off as client entertainment. It all made sense now, and the realization hit her like a physical blow. The woman was beautiful in a way that made Simone suddenly aware of her own pregnancy weight, her swollen ankles, and her practical shoes. This woman looked like she belonged in a magazine, not in real life. Her skin was flawless, her hair styled perfectly despite the humidity, and her body was everything Simone's used to be before pregnancy. Oliver checked his expensive watch and said something to the woman that made her pout playfully. He kissed her forehead and pulled her closer, his hands resting possessively on her waist. The intimacy of the gesture made Simone's stomach turn. This wasn't just a fling or a one-time mistake. This was a relationship. A real, developed relationship that had been going on behind her back for who knows how long. "Attention passengers," the security announcement crackled through the speakers. "Mrs. Simone Crawford, please report to the security checkpoint." Mrs. Simone Crawford to security. Simone's blood ran cold. She had asked the parking attendant to page her husband when she arrived, giving them her name by mistake in her nervousness. Now the announcement echoed through the terminal, and she watched in horror as Oliver's face went completely white. His head snapped up, scanning the crowd frantically. The blonde woman looked confused, asking him something urgently. Oliver's usual confidence crumbled as he realized what the announcement meant. His wife was here. His pregnant wife was somewhere in this airport, and she might have seen everything. "Mrs. Simone Crawford to security checkpoint," the voice repeated, and Simone saw Oliver's hands start to shake. The woman grabbed his arm, clearly alarmed by his sudden change in demeanor. She was asking questions, but Oliver wasn't responding. His eyes were darting around the terminal like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. For the first time in their marriage, Simone saw her husband look genuinely afraid. The powerful, confident businessman who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals was trembling like a child caught stealing candy. His face had gone from tanned and relaxed to pale and panicked in seconds. The woman was getting more agitated, clearly sensing something was wrong. She pulled out her phone and started typing rapidly, probably texting someone. Oliver grabbed her wrist to stop her, and they began what looked like an urgent, heated conversation. Simone remained frozen in place, watching the scene unfold. Part of her wanted to run, to get back in her car and drive home and pretend this never happened. But another part of her, the part that had been growing stronger throughout her pregnancy, knew she needed to face this head-on. She thought about the nursery they'd painted together just last month. About the baby names they'd discussed over dinner. About the way Oliver had rubbed her feet every night when they were swollen. Had it all been a lie? Had he been thinking about this other woman while he pretended to be excited about their baby? The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if responding to her emotional turmoil. Simone placed her hand on her belly and took a deep breath. She had to be strong now, not just for herself, but for the innocent life growing inside her. This child deserved better than a father who could betray his family so easily. Oliver was still scanning the crowd, his panic growing with each second. The blonde woman had stepped back from him, clearly upset by whatever he'd just told her. She was shaking her head, her perfect composure finally cracking. Simone made her decision. She wouldn't hide. She wouldn't run away. She would face this situation with dignity and strength, even if it destroyed her world completely. Taking one last deep breath, she began walking toward the man she'd once trusted with her life and the woman who had helped him shatter it. Simone's footsteps echoed against the polished airport floor as she approached her husband and his mistress. Each step felt like walking through quicksand, but she forced herself to keep moving. The baby seemed to sense her determination and settled into a calm stillness inside her belly. "Oliver," she called out, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the terminal. Her husband's head whipped around, and when his eyes met hers, she saw a flash of guilt so intense it took her breath away. But within seconds, his expression shifted to one of forced surprise and false joy. "Simone, what are you doing here?" Oliver's voice was too loud, too cheerful, like an actor overplaying his part. He stepped away from the blonde woman, but not quickly enough to hide what had been happening between them. The woman looked between Simone and Oliver, her confusion evident. She was even more beautiful up close, with porcelain skin and eyes the color of summer sky. Her designer handbag probably cost more than Simone's car payment, and her jewelry sparkled under the terminal lights. "I came to surprise you," Simone said, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "I wanted to pick you up from your business trip." She emphasized the last two words, making it clear she knew exactly what kind of business he'd been conducting. Oliver's face flushed red. This is just a colleague. Victoria works with one of our client companies. We were just discussing the project." Victoria. So that was her name. The woman who had been kissing her husband looked nothing like a business colleague. Her lipstick was smudged, her hair slightly mussed, and she had the unmistakable glow of a woman who'd been thoroughly kissed. "Really?" Simone asked, her voice dangerously calm. "Because that didn't look like a business discussion to me." Several passengers had started to notice the tension unfolding near gate 15. A few slowed their walking, pretending to check their phones while actually listening to the drama. Simone didn't care. Let them watch. Let them see what kind of man Oliver Crawford really was. Victoria finally found her voice. "I'm sorry, who are you exactly?" Her tone was haughty, entitled, as if Simone was interrupting something important. "I'm his wife," Simone said, placing her hand on her pregnant belly, "and the mother of his child." Victoria's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, embarrassment, anger, and finally realization. She turned to Oliver with fire in her eyes. "You told me you were divorced. You said the papers were final." "I can explain," Oliver started, but Victoria cut him off. "You're married? And she's pregnant?" Victoria's voice was rising, drawing more attention from nearby passengers. "You lying piece of—" "Victoria, please," Oliver interrupted, glancing nervously at the growing audience. "Let's discuss this privately." But Simone had heard enough. "No, Oliver. Let's discuss this right here, right now. How long has this been going on?" Oliver's eyes darted between his wife and his mistress, clearly trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. "Simone, you're pregnant. You shouldn't be stressed. Let's go home and talk about this calmly." "Don't you dare use my pregnancy to manipulate me," Simone snapped, her voice carrying across the terminal. "Answer my question. How long?" The crowd around them had grown larger. Some people were openly staring now, while others pretended to be busy with their luggage while clearly listening to every word. Airport security was starting to take notice too, with two guards beginning to walk in their direction. Victoria was still glaring at Oliver. "6 months," she said finally. "We've been together for 6 months. He told me he was getting divorced, that you were basically separated already." Simone's heart stopped. 6 months. That meant Oliver had been cheating on her since the beginning of her pregnancy. While she was dealing with morning sickness and exhaustion, he was romancing another woman. While she was excited about their first ultrasound, he was lying to both of them. 6 months, Simone repeated, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "You've been lying to me for 6 months." "It's not what you think," Oliver said desperately. "It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far." "What did you mean for it to be then?" Simone asked. "A quick fling while your wife was home carrying your baby?" Victoria was putting the pieces together now, and her anger was redirecting toward Oliver. "You told me she was difficult, that you were unhappy. You said you were only staying for the divorce proceedings. I am unhappy, Oliver said, and the words hit Simone like a slap. We've been growing apart for months. You've been so focused on the pregnancy, and I felt like I was losing you. So you decided to find yourself in another woman's bed? Simone's voice was getting louder, but she didn't care. The security guards were closer now, but she wasn't done. While I was home alone, sick and scared about becoming a mother, you were playing house with her? Simone, please. Oliver reached for her arm, but she stepped back. Don't touch me, she said firmly. Don't you ever touch me again. Victoria was crying now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks. I can't believe you did this to me. To both of us. You're disgusting. Victoria, wait, Oliver called as she started to walk away, but she turned back with venom in her eyes. Lose my number, she said. And lose hers too. You don't deserve either of us. As Victoria disappeared into the crowd, Oliver turned back to Simone with desperation in his eyes. Baby, please. We can work this out. I made a mistake, but I love you. I love our baby. No, Simone said, her voice surprisingly strong. You don't love me. You don't even respect me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do this. I was confused, Oliver pleaded. The pregnancy changed everything. I felt like I was losing the woman I married. You were losing her, Simone agreed. I was becoming something better. A mother. But you were too selfish to see that. The security guards finally reached them. Is everything okay here? One of them asked, clearly having heard enough to understand the situation. Everything's fine, Simone said, her voice steady. My husband and I are done talking. She turned to walk away, but Oliver grabbed her arm. Simone, please. Don't leave like this. Think about our baby. Simone looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. I'm thinking about our baby. I'm thinking about what kind of father would cheat on his pregnant wife. I'm thinking about what kind of man would lie to 2 women for 6 months. And I'm thinking that my baby deserves better. She gently but firmly removed his hand from her arm. Don't follow me, Oliver. Don't come home tonight. Don't call me. I need time to think. But where will I go? Oliver asked, his voice breaking. I don't care, Simone said, and she meant it. That's not my problem anymore. As she walked away, she heard Oliver calling her name, but she didn't turn back. The baby kicked softly as if approving of her decision. For the first time in months, Simone felt like she could breathe again. The drive home felt like a lifetime. Simone's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, her mind replaying every moment of the airport confrontation. The baby moved restlessly inside her, sensing her distress. She had to pull over twice to catch her breath and compose herself. When she finally reached their upscale neighborhood, the house looked different somehow. The perfectly manicured lawn and expensive cars in the driveway seemed like props in a play she no longer wanted to be part of. This wasn't her home anymore. It was the place where she'd been living a lie. Inside, everything looked exactly as she'd left it that morning. The breakfast dishes still sat in the sink. The pregnancy books she'd been reading were stacked on the coffee table. The ultrasound picture from last week was still stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet that read baby's first photo. But now it all felt hollow, meaningless. Simone walked through the house with new eyes, looking for signs she'd missed. In Oliver's home office, she found his laptop still open from the morning. He'd been rushing to catch his flight and hadn't closed it properly. The email program was still running, and she could see several messages from someone named V in his inbox. Her heart pounding, she clicked on the first email. It was from Victoria, sent 3 days ago. Can't wait to see you in Miami. I've booked us a suite at the Ritz. 2 more days and we can be together again. Love you. Simone's vision blurred as she read message after message. Victoria talking about their future together. Oliver promising to file for divorce soon. Plans for weekend getaways. Intimate photos that made Simone's stomach turn. The emails went back months, confirming what Victoria had said at the airport. But there was more. Oliver had been lying about his business trips too. The receipts in his email showed luxury hotels for 2 people, expensive restaurants, jewelry purchases that had never made it home to Simone. He'd been living a completely different life, funded by their joint bank account. Simone opened their banking app on her phone and nearly collapsed. Thousands of dollars were missing from their savings account. Money they'd been saving for the baby's college fund, for a bigger house, for their future together. Oliver had been spending it on his mistress while telling Simone they needed to be more careful with money. The credit card statements were even worse. Designer clothes, expensive hotels, jewelry from stores Simone had never heard of. Oliver had been funding an entire relationship while she'd been clipping coupons and buying generic brands to save money for the baby. As she dug deeper into his computer, more lies unraveled. Oliver had been telling Victoria that Simone was mentally unstable, that she was making up the pregnancy to trap him. He'd shown Victoria photos of their house, promising that after the divorce, they could live there together. He'd even discussed selling the nursery furniture because it wouldn't be needed anymore. Simone ran to the bathroom and threw up, her body rejecting the horrible truth she'd uncovered. When she was done, she sat on the bathroom floor and cried until she had no tears left. The baby kicked gently as if trying to comfort her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. "Please call me. I'm at the Marriott downtown. We need to talk." She deleted the message without responding and turned off her phone. She couldn't deal with his lies and manipulation right now. She needed to think clearly to figure out what to do next. Back in the office, she found more disturbing information. Oliver had been researching divorce lawyers, but not for the reasons he'd told Victoria. He'd been looking for ways to minimize his financial responsibility, to hide assets, to get out of paying child support. There were printed articles about men who'd successfully avoided paying alimony to pregnant wives. The man she'd married, the man she'd trusted with her heart and her future, was a stranger. He'd been planning to abandon her and their baby while maintaining his affair with Victoria. He'd been stealing their money to fund his double life while she'd been home alone, dealing with the physical and emotional challenges of pregnancy. Simone found a folder marked Insurance in Oliver's desk drawer. Inside were life insurance policies she'd never seen before. Oliver had recently increased his coverage and changed the beneficiary from Simone to his mother. If something happened to him, Simone and the baby would get nothing. There were also legal documents about the house. Oliver had been consulting with lawyers about removing Simone's name from the deed. He'd been planning to leave her pregnant and homeless while he started a new life with Victoria. The more she discovered, the more she realized how calculated and cruel Oliver's betrayal had been. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was a deliberate plan to destroy her life while protecting himself. Her phone rang. It was her sister Rachel calling from California. Simone almost didn't answer, but she needed to hear a friendly voice. "Hey, how are you feeling?" Rachel asked cheerfully. "Is the baby kicking a lot today?" Simone broke down again, telling Rachel everything through tears. Her sister listened without interrupting, occasionally making sounds of shock and disgust. "Oh honey," Rachel said when Simone finished. "I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Simone admitted. "I can't even think straight right now. Can you come stay with me for a while? You shouldn't be alone right now." "I can't run away," Simone said, surprising herself with her resolve. "This is my home too. I'm not the one who should leave." "Then what's your plan?" Simone looked around the office at all the evidence of Oliver's betrayal. "I'm going to fight back. I'm going to make sure he can't do this to anyone else." "Be careful," Rachel warned. "Men like Oliver can be dangerous when they're cornered." "I'm not afraid of him anymore," Simone said, and she meant it. "I'm angry. And I'm going to use that anger to protect my baby and myself." After she hung up, Simone spent the rest of the evening going through every document, every email, every piece of evidence she could find. She photographed everything with her phone and uploaded it to a secure cloud storage account Oliver couldn't access. By midnight, she had a clear picture of just how deep Oliver's deception went. He'd been planning to abandon her for months, stealing their money to fund his affair while researching ways to avoid his responsibilities as a father. But Simone also had something Oliver didn't know about: evidence. Lots of it. And she was going to use every piece to make sure he paid for what he'd done. As she finally went to bed, the baby kicked softly against her ribs. She placed her hand on her belly and made a promise. "I'm going to protect you, little one. Your father may be a liar and a cheat, but you're going to have a strong mother who will never let anyone hurt you." The next morning, Simone woke up to the sound of Oliver's key in the front door. She heard him moving around downstairs, probably expecting to find her waiting for him with forgiveness and understanding. Instead, she stayed in bed, her hand resting on her belly as the baby stirred awake with her. "Simone." Oliver called from the bottom of the stairs. "Are you up there? We need to talk." She didn't respond. Let him wonder. Let him feel the uncertainty she'd been living with for months without knowing it. His footsteps on the stairs were hesitant, careful. When he appeared in the bedroom doorway, he looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was messy, his expensive shirt wrinkled, and his eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. "How was your night at the Marriott?" Simone asked without looking at him. Oliver's face fell. "You got my text." I got it. I deleted it. She finally turned to face him and he flinched at the coldness in her eyes. Just like I'm going to delete you from my life. Simone, please. I know you're hurt, but... Hurt. She sat up in bed, her voice rising. Hurt is when you forget our anniversary. Hurt is when you're late for dinner. This is betrayal, Oliver. This is you stealing our baby's future to pay for your affair. Oliver's face went pale. What are you talking about? I know about the money, Simone said, pulling out her phone to show him the bank statements. $30,000 from our savings account. Money we were saving for our child's future. You spent it on hotels and jewelry for your mistress. I was going to pay it back, Oliver said weakly. With what? The money you were going to make after you divorced me and left me with nothing? Simone stood up, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward but her resolve making her strong. I found your research, Oliver. I know about the lawyers, the insurance policies, the house deed. You weren't just cheating on me. You were planning to destroy me. Oliver sat heavily on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Simone demanded. You were going to wait until after the baby was born and then leave us both? Or were you hoping I'd lose the baby so you could run off with Victoria guilt-free? Don't say that. Oliver looked up, his eyes flashing with anger. I would never want anything to happen to our baby. Our baby? Simone laughed bitterly. You told Victoria I was making up the pregnancy to trap you. You researched ways to avoid paying child support. You changed your life insurance so that if you died, your own child would get nothing. Tell me again how much you care about our baby. Oliver's shoulders sagged in defeat. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew exactly what you wanted, Simone said, walking to the closet and pulling out a suitcase. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted to keep me at home, pregnant and dependent, while you played house with your girlfriend. What are you doing? Oliver asked, watching her pack clothes into the suitcase. I'm leaving, Simone said matter-of-factly. I'm going to stay with my sister until I figure out what to do next. You can't leave, Oliver said, standing up. This is your home. Our home. No, Simone said, continuing to pack. This is the house where you plan to betray me and abandon our child. I can't live here anymore. Simone, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. I'll do anything to make it right. She stopped packing and turned to face him. Anything? Yes, Oliver said eagerly. Anything. Give me back the $30,000 you stole from our savings account. Oliver's face fell. I don't have it. I spent it. Then get it back from Victoria. I'm sure she has some of the jewelry you bought her. I can't do that, Oliver said. She's not speaking to me anymore. Then get a loan. Sell your car. Do whatever you have to do, but get me that money back. I can't, Oliver said quietly. I'm already in debt. The company is going through a rough patch and I've been using credit cards to cover our expenses. Simone stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying we don't have any money, Oliver admitted. I've been borrowing against our credit cards to pay the mortgage. I lost a big client last month and my commission is way down. So you decided to spend money we don't have on your mistress? Simone's voice was dangerously calm. I thought things would turn around, Oliver said desperately. I thought if I could just get through this rough patch, I could pay everything back and no one would ever know. But instead you got caught, Simone said. And now we're broke and I'm pregnant, and you've destroyed our marriage for a woman who won't even talk to you anymore. Oliver started crying and Simone felt nothing but disgust. Please don't leave me, he sobbed. I know I messed up, but I love you. I love our baby. I'll do anything to make this right. You should have thought about that before you started lying to me, Simone said, closing the suitcase. You should have thought about that before you stole our money. You should have thought about that before you planned to leave me homeless and pregnant. I never would have actually done it, Oliver said. I was just exploring my options. Your options. Simone picked up her purse and headed for the door. Let me tell you about your options now. You can either agree to give me everything I want in the divorce, or I can take all the evidence I found and make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Oliver's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me, Simone said. I have emails, bank statements, photos, and witness testimony from your girlfriend. I have enough evidence to destroy your reputation and your career. The only question is whether you want to make this easy or hard. What do you want? Oliver asked, his voice barely a whisper. I want the house. I want full custody of our baby. I want you to pay child support and alimony. And I want you to stay away from me and our child unless I say otherwise. That's everything, Oliver said. That's what you get for cheating on your pregnant wife, Simone replied. You made your choice, Oliver. Now you have to live with the consequences. She walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and out the front door without looking back. Oliver didn't follow her. He knew he had no right to. As she drove away from the house, Simone felt a strange sense of relief. The worst was over. She'd confronted the truth, made her decision, and taken the first step toward building a new life for herself and her baby. The road ahead would be difficult, but she was strong enough to handle it. She had to be. Her baby was depending on her. 3 weeks later, Simone sat in the office of Patricia Mills, the best divorce lawyer in the city. The walls were lined with law books and certificates, and Patricia's desk was covered with files and legal documents. At 55, Patricia had silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I have to say, Mrs. Crawford, you've done excellent work documenting your husband's behavior, Patricia said, reviewing the evidence Simone had gathered. Most clients come to me with suspicions and hurt feelings. You've come with proof. I want to make sure he can't hurt anyone else, Simone said, her hand resting on her now 7-month pregnant belly. And I want to protect my baby's future. We can definitely do that, Patricia assured her. But I want to dig deeper. Men like your husband don't usually limit their deception to just affairs. If he's been lying to you about one thing, he's probably lying about others. Patricia recommended a private investigator named James Turner. He was a former police detective who specialized in financial crimes and infidelity cases. When Simone met him the next day, she was impressed by his quiet confidence and attention to detail. I've been doing this for 20 years, James told her as they sat in his modest office. Men like your husband follow patterns. They think they're smart, but they usually leave trails everywhere. Within a week, James had uncovered information that made Simone's stomach turn. Oliver hadn't just been cheating with Victoria. There had been at least 3 other women over the past 2 years, all of whom he'd met through work or social events. He has a type, James explained, showing Simone photos and documentation. Young, ambitious, usually new to the city. He tells them all the same story about being unhappily married and planning to divorce soon. But the financial investigation was even more disturbing. Oliver had been hiding money for months, transferring funds to secret accounts and making investments in his name only. He'd also been lying about his income, claiming to make less than he actually did so he could justify his spending. He's been planning this for a long time, James said. This wasn't a sudden decision. He's been systematically preparing to leave you while making sure he kept as much money as possible. Simone felt sick. How long? Based on the financial patterns, I'd say at least a year. Maybe longer. The betrayal felt even deeper now. While she'd been excited about starting a family, Oliver had been planning to abandon her. While she'd been picking out baby clothes and preparing the nursery, he'd been hiding assets and researching divorce strategies. But James had more news. I also found some irregularities in his business dealings. It looks like he might be involved in some questionable practices at his company. Oliver worked for a high-end investment firm that managed money for wealthy clients. James had discovered that Oliver had been moving client funds around in ways that might not be legal. I'm not a financial expert, James said, but this looks like he might be using client money for his own purposes. That's a serious federal crime. Simone's mind raced. If Oliver was committing crimes at work, he could go to prison. That would solve her custody concerns, but it would also mean her baby would grow up with a father who was a criminal. What should I do? She asked. We need to get this information to the right authorities, James said. But we also need to be careful. If Oliver figures out we're investigating him, he might try to cover his tracks or flee. Patricia agreed when Simone brought her the new evidence. This changes everything, the lawyer said. If Oliver is committing financial crimes, the federal authorities will be very interested in our evidence. Will this help my case? Simone asked. It will end your case, Patricia replied. If Oliver goes to prison, you'll get everything you want by default. But are you prepared for that? Simone thought about her unborn baby. Did she want her child to grow up knowing their father was a criminal? But then she thought about Victoria and all the other women Oliver had deceived. She thought about the clients whose money he might have stolen. She thought about the web of lies he'd built around their entire marriage. He made these choices, Simone said finally. I'm not going to protect him from the consequences just because he's my baby's father. Patricia nodded approvingly. Then we move forward. But we need to be smart about this. We'll coordinate with the federal investigators to make sure we don't interfere with their case. 2 days later, Simone found herself in a sterile conference room at the FBI field office, telling her story to Agent Sarah Chin. The agent was around Simone's age, with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that put Simone at ease. "We've been watching Oliver's firm for several months," Agent Chin explained. "We suspected something was wrong, but we didn't have enough evidence to move forward. Your information could be exactly what we need." "What happens now?" Simone asked. "We'll need you to continue acting normally while we investigate further. Don't let Oliver know you're suspicious about his business activities. Can you do that?" Simone nodded. She'd been pretending everything was fine for weeks while she gathered evidence. She could keep it up a little longer. "We'll also need you to be prepared to testify if this goes to trial," Agent Chin continued. "Are you comfortable with that?" "Yes," Simone said without hesitation. "I want him to face the consequences of what he's done." Agent Chin smiled. "Good. We'll be in touch soon." As Simone left the FBI office, she felt a mixture of fear and satisfaction. She was afraid of what would happen to Oliver and how it would affect their baby. But she was also satisfied that justice would be served. Oliver had made his choices and now he would have to live with them. The baby kicked strongly as she walked to her car, as if approving of her decision. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "Don't worry, little one. Mama's going to make sure you grow up in a world where the truth matters." While the FBI investigation continued quietly in the background, Simone's personal life was changing rapidly. She'd moved into a small apartment across town, determined to build a new life for herself and her baby. The space was modest compared to the house she'd shared with Oliver, but it felt honest and clean in a way her old home never had. She was 7.5 months pregnant now, and the baby seemed to be growing stronger every day. During her latest doctor's appointment, she'd learned she was having a girl. The news had filled her with joy and determination. Her daughter would grow up knowing her worth, knowing that she deserved honesty and respect. It was during one of her prenatal yoga classes that Simone met Robert Harrison. He was visiting the wellness center to check on his sister Amy, who was also pregnant and in the same class. When Amy introduced them, Simone was struck by Robert's genuine warmth and the way he clearly adored his sister. "Simone's been my pregnancy buddy," Amy explained to her brother. "We're both due around the same time, and we've been supporting each other through all the craziness." Robert smiled at Simone. "Amy's told me a lot about you. She says you're one of the strongest people she's ever met." Simone felt herself blush. She hadn't received many compliments lately, and Robert's sincere tone caught her off guard. "Amy's been amazing. I don't know what I would have done without her friendship." After class, Robert offered to buy them both smoothies at the juice bar next door. As they sat talking, Simone learned that Robert owned a successful consulting firm that helped businesses improve their operations and finances. "I actually know your husband," Robert said carefully. "Well, I know of him. Our companies have been in competition for some of the same clients." Simone's stomach tightened. "What kind of competition?" "Nothing personal," Robert assured her quickly. "Just business. Although I have to say, I've heard some concerning things about his firm's practices recently." Amy shot her brother a warning look. "Robert, maybe we shouldn't." "No, it's okay," Simone said. "I'm going through a divorce. I'd actually like to know what people are saying about Oliver's company." Robert looked uncomfortable but continued. "There have been rumors about client funds being mismanaged. Some of the other firms in the city have been warning their clients to be careful. I'm sorry to have to tell you this." "Don't be sorry," Simone said. "I'm gathering evidence for my divorce case. Anything you can tell me might be helpful." Over the next few weeks, Simone found herself spending more time with Robert and Amy. They included her in family dinners and weekend activities, treating her like she belonged. It was the first time in months that Simone felt truly supported. Robert was different from Oliver in every way. Where Oliver was flashy and loud, Robert was thoughtful and quiet. Where Oliver demanded attention, Robert listened carefully to others. Where Oliver made promises he couldn't keep, Robert followed through on even the smallest commitments. "You don't have to do this," Simone told Robert one evening as he helped her assemble a crib in her apartment. "I can hire someone to put this together." "I want to help," Robert said, tightening a bolt with careful precision. "Amy would kill me if I let her pregnant friend struggle with furniture assembly." "Is that the only reason?" Simone asked, surprised by her own boldness. Robert stopped working and looked at her. "No," he said quietly. "That's not the only reason." The attraction between them was undeniable, but Simone was still technically married and very pregnant. Robert never pushed or made her feel uncomfortable. Instead, he simply made himself available whenever she needed support. It was Robert who noticed the black sedan that had been following Simone to her doctor's appointments. It was Robert who insisted on walking her to her car after dark. And it was Robert who was with her when Agent Chen called with an update on the investigation. "We're ready to move forward," Agent Chen told Simone over the phone. "We have enough evidence to arrest Oliver and several of his colleagues. It's going to happen tomorrow morning." Simone felt her knees go weak. Robert immediately moved to support her, guiding her to a chair and bringing her a glass of water. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "They're arresting Oliver tomorrow," Simone whispered. "It's really happening." "Good," Robert said firmly. "He deserves whatever he gets." "But what about the baby?" Simone asked, tears starting to fall. "What kind of life will she have with a criminal for a father?" Robert knelt down beside her chair and took her hands in his. "She'll have a life with a mother who was brave enough to do the right thing. She'll have a life where justice matters and truth wins out over lies. You're giving her the best possible start." That night, Simone couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about everything that had led to this moment. A year ago, she'd been planning a future with Oliver, excited about starting a family. Now she was about to become a single mother while her husband faced federal charges. But she also thought about the people who had stood by her through this ordeal. Patricia, who had fought tirelessly for her rights. James, who had uncovered the truth about Oliver's crimes. Agent Chen, who had taken her seriously and pursued justice. Amy, who had become the sister she'd never had. And Robert, who had shown her what it meant to be truly supported by someone who cared. The baby kicked strongly, and Simone placed her hand on her belly. "Tomorrow changes everything, little girl," she whispered. "But don't worry. We're going to be okay. We have good people in our corner now." As dawn broke, Simone felt a strange sense of peace. The hardest part was over. Oliver would face the consequences of his choices, and she would be free to build the life she and her daughter deserved. She was ready for whatever came next. Agent Chen called Simone at 6 a.m. sharp. "It's done," she said simply. "Oliver Crawford is in federal custody, along with 3 of his colleagues. We executed search warrants at his office and your old house simultaneously." Simone sat up in bed, her heart racing. After months of investigation and planning, it was finally over. "What happens now?" "Now he goes through the legal process," Agent Chen explained. "He'll be arraigned this afternoon and then it's up to the prosecutors. But given the evidence we have, I expect him to be denied bail." Flight risk. Flight risk. "We found a fake passport in his office safe, along with $20,000 in cash and a one-way ticket to a country with no extradition treaty. He was planning to run." Simone felt sick. Even after everything she'd discovered, Oliver could still surprise her with new levels of betrayal. "What about the baby? What about me?" "He was planning to leave you both behind," Agent Chen said gently. "I'm sorry, Simone. I know this is hard to hear." After hanging up, Simone called Robert. He answered on the first ring as if he'd been waiting for her call. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I don't know," Simone admitted. "I should feel relieved, but I just feel empty." "That's normal," Robert said. "You've been running on adrenaline for months. Now that it's over, you're going to crash a little. But you did the right thing. Can you come over?" Simone asked. "I don't want to be alone right now." "I'm already in my car," Robert said, and Simone could hear the smile in his voice. 20 minutes later, Robert arrived with coffee, pastries, and the morning newspaper. The story hadn't hit the news yet, but it would soon. Crawford investment firm raided by FBI would be front-page news by evening. "Are you ready for this to become public?" Robert asked as they sat together on Simone's couch. "I think so," Simone said. "I'm tired of hiding what he did. Let people know the truth." Her phone rang. It was Patricia with updates on the legal front. Oliver's been charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. The prosecutors are also looking at tax evasion charges. He's looking at 20 to 30 years in prison. 20 to 30 years? Simone repeated, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "He stole over $2 million from his clients," Patricia explained. "This isn't just about your marriage anymore. This is about real crimes that hurt real people." Patricia had more news. "I've also filed for emergency custody and an expedited divorce. Given the circumstances, I expect both to be granted quickly. Oliver's criminal activity makes him an unfit parent in the eyes of the court." "What about child support?" Simone asked. "That's complicated. Most of his assets are going to be seized to pay back his victims. But we'll make sure you get something. The court won't leave you and the baby with nothing." After Patricia hung up, Simone felt overwhelmed. The legal process was moving faster than she'd expected, and she was struggling to keep up with all the implications. "Talk to me," Robert said gently. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about my daughter," Simone said. "She's going to grow up with everyone knowing her father is a criminal. How do I explain that to her?" "You tell her the truth," Robert said. "You tell her that her mother was brave enough to do the right thing even when it was hard. You tell her that actions have consequences, and that she should never be afraid to stand up for what's right." "You make it sound so simple," Simone said. "It is simple," Robert replied. "Not easy but simple. You're a good person, Simone. You're going to raise a good daughter." The next few hours brought a steady stream of phone calls. Reporters wanting comments. Friends and family expressing shock and support. And finally, a call from Victoria. "I saw the news," Victoria said, her voice shaky. "I can't believe this is happening." "Can't believe what?" Simone asked coolly. "That the man who was cheating on both of us turned out to be a criminal?" "I never knew about the money," Victoria said quickly. "I swear I didn't know he was stealing from clients." "But you knew he was married," Simone pointed out. "You knew he was lying to me. I thought you two were getting divorced anyway." "He said you were unhappy." "I was unhappy," Simone agreed. "I was unhappy because my husband was cheating on me and lying to me. But I didn't know that at the time." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry," Victoria said finally. "I know that doesn't mean much now, but I'm sorry." "Thank you," Simone said. She meant it. Victoria had been manipulated too in her own way. "Are you going to be okay?" Victoria asked. "With a baby and everything?" "I'm going to be fine," Simone said, looking at Robert, who was quietly organizing her legal documents. "I have good people in my life now. People who tell the truth." After Victoria hung up, Simone felt a chapter of her life closing. The anger and betrayal were still there, but they were starting to fade. What remained was a sense of purpose and determination. "I want to start my own business," she told Robert suddenly. "What kind of business?" he asked, not seeming surprised by the sudden change of topic. "Consulting. Financial consulting for women going through divorce. I want to help other women avoid what happened to me." Robert smiled. "That's a great idea. You have experience now that could help a lot of people." "Would you help me?" Simone asked. "I know you have your own business, but—" "I'd be honored to help," Robert said. "We could be partners. In business, I mean." "Just in business?" Simone asked, meeting his eyes. "For now," Robert said carefully. "You have a lot to figure out first. But when you're ready, I'll be here." As evening fell, Simone felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. Oliver was gone, facing justice for his crimes. Her baby was healthy and growing strong. And she had people in her life who cared about her genuinely. The road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready for it. She had plans now, goals that went beyond just surviving Oliver's betrayal. She was going to build something better. The arraignment was scheduled for 2 p.m., and Simone decided to attend. She wanted to see Oliver face the consequences of his actions, even though Patricia had warned her it might be difficult. "Are you sure about this?" Robert asked as he drove her to the courthouse. "You don't have to put yourself through this." "I need to see it," Simone said, her hand resting on her 8-month pregnant belly. "I need to see him being held accountable." The courthouse was buzzing with activity. Reporters had gathered outside, and several of Oliver's former clients were there as well. Simone recognized some faces from company parties and social events, back when she'd thought Oliver was a successful, honest businessman. Inside the courtroom, Oliver looked smaller than she remembered. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. When he turned and saw her in the gallery, his face crumpled with what looked like genuine remorse. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Michelle Torres, laid out the charges methodically. Mr. Crawford systematically stole over $2 million from his clients over a period of 18 months. He used these funds to finance an elaborate double life, including multiple affairs and luxury purchases. Oliver's lawyer, a nervous-looking man who seemed overwhelmed by the case, attempted to argue for bail. "Your Honor, my client has strong ties to the community. He's expecting a child with his wife." "Ex-wife," Patricia corrected loudly from the gallery. "Mrs. Crawford has filed for divorce due to Mr. Crawford's criminal behavior." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was not impressed with the bail argument. Mr. Crawford was found with a fake passport and a substantial amount of cash. He also had a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country. Bail is denied. Oliver's head dropped as the reality of his situation sank in. He was going to jail and he wasn't getting out anytime soon. As the court officers led Oliver away, he turned back to look at Simone one last time. His mouth moved as if he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Simone felt nothing but pity for him. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Simone. She had prepared a statement with Patricia's help. "I want to thank the FBI and the prosecutors for their thorough investigation," she said, reading from her notes. "My ex-husband's crimes hurt many people, including his clients who trusted him with their life savings. I hope this case sends a message that financial fraud will not be tolerated." "Mrs. Crawford, how do you feel about your husband's arrest?" one reporter called out. "I feel sad for the victims of his crimes," Simone replied. "And I feel grateful that justice is being served. What about your baby? How will you explain this to your child?" Simone looked directly into the camera. "I will tell my daughter that her mother stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. I will tell her that actions have consequences, and that honesty and integrity matter more than money or status." The press conference ended and Robert guided Simone to their car. As they drove away, she felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. Oliver was gone from her life permanently now, and she was free to focus on her future. But the day wasn't over yet. That evening, Simone received a call from Agent Chen with surprising news. "We've recovered most of the stolen money," Agent Chen said. "Oliver kept detailed records of his transactions, probably thinking he was too smart to get caught. We've been able to trace almost every dollar." "That's good news for his victims," Simone said. "It's good news for you too," Agent Chen continued. "The court has ruled that since you were defrauded along with Oliver's clients, you're entitled to compensation. Between the recovered funds and the sale of marital assets, you should be able to recover most of what he stole from your joint accounts." Simone sat down heavily. She'd been preparing to start over with nothing, and now she was being told she might get her money back. "There's more," Agent Chen said. "Oliver has agreed to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's providing information about other financial crimes in the industry." "What does that mean for me?" Simone asked. "It means he'll probably serve 15 to 20 years instead of 20 to 30. But it also means you won't have to testify at trial. He's pleading guilty to all charges." After hanging up, Simone called Robert to share the news. He was thrilled that she would get her money back, but concerned about Oliver's reduced sentence. "Are you okay with him getting less time?" Robert asked. "I'm okay with it," Simone said. "I never wanted revenge. I just wanted justice and protection for my baby. If he helps catch other criminals, that's good for everyone." The next morning brought more good news. Patricia called to say that the divorce had been finalized. Oliver had signed all the papers from jail, agreeing to give Simone full custody of their daughter and most of their marital assets. He also agreed to give up his parental rights, Patricia explained. "He said he doesn't want to be a burden to you or the baby." "That's probably for the best," Simone said. "My daughter deserves stability, not visits to a federal prison." "There's one more thing," Patricia said. "Oliver wanted me to give you a message. He said he's sorry for everything he put you through, and he hopes you can find happiness." Simone was quiet for a long moment. "Tell him I forgive him," she said finally. "Not for his sake but for mine. I don't want to carry anger for the rest of my life." That afternoon, Simone sat in her apartment, surrounded by evidence boxes that she could finally throw away. The investigation was over, the legal proceedings were finished, and her new life could truly begin. The baby kicked strongly as if sensing the change in her mother's mood. Simone smiled and rubbed her belly. "It's over, little girl," she whispered. "All the drama and pain and lies are over. From now on, it's just you and me building something beautiful." Robert arrived that evening with dinner and flowers. "How does it feel?" he asked, settling beside her on the couch. "Like I can finally breathe," Simone said. "Like I can finally think about the future instead of just surviving the present." "And what does that future look like?" Robert asked. Simone looked at him, this man who had stood by her through the worst period of her life without asking for anything in return. "I think it looks pretty good," she said. The trap had sprung perfectly. Oliver was in prison, her daughter was protected, and Simone was free to build the life she'd always deserved. 6 months after his arrest, Oliver Crawford sat in a federal prison cell, staring at the concrete walls that had become his world. The man who had once commanded respect in boardrooms and driven luxury cars now wore an orange jumpsuit and ate from plastic trays. His cellmate, a gruff man named Tony who was serving time for tax evasion, had little sympathy for Oliver's situation. "You had it all," Tony said, shaking his head. "Beautiful wife, baby on the way, successful business. And you threw it all away for what? Some blonde who wouldn't even visit you in here." Oliver had stopped trying to justify his actions months ago. The enormity of what he'd done had finally sunk in during the long, empty hours of prison life. He'd destroyed his marriage, abandoned his daughter, and stolen from people who had trusted him. There was no excuse for any of it. The news from the outside world was not encouraging. His former business partner had testified against him, revealing even more financial crimes that added years to his sentence. His mother had stopped taking his calls after reporters showed up at her house. And most painfully, he'd learned that Simone had given birth to their daughter and named her Grace. "Grace Crawford," Oliver whispered to himself, staring at the single photo Simone had sent him. The baby was beautiful, with Simone's expressive eyes and a smile that reminded him of what he'd lost. On the back of the photo, Simone had written, "She's healthy and happy. That's all you need to know." It was more than he deserved, and he knew it. Meanwhile, Simone was thriving in ways that surprised even her. 3 months after Grace's birth, she had launched her consulting business, Second Chances Financial, helping women navigate divorce and financial recovery. Her first client was a woman whose husband had been hiding assets, and Simone's expertise had saved her from making costly mistakes. "You understand what it's like," the client had told Simone after they'd successfully recovered her hidden savings. "You've been through this hell and come out stronger. That gives me hope." Word spread quickly through the legal community about Simone's unique expertise. Divorce lawyers began referring clients to her, and she soon had a waiting list of women who needed her help. Robert had been invaluable in helping her structure the business, and their professional partnership had gradually evolved into something deeper. "I love watching you work," Robert told her one evening as they closed the office together. "You've turned your worst experience into something that helps other people. That's incredible. It feels good to use what I learned," Simone said, packing up her files. "Every time I help someone avoid what happened to me, it makes everything I went through feel worthwhile." At home, baby Grace was growing into a happy, healthy toddler. At 14 months old, she was walking and babbling constantly, filling Simone's apartment with laughter and joy. Simone had never asked for child support from Oliver, and she'd never needed it. Her business was successful enough to support them both comfortably. "Mama work," Grace would say, pointing to Simone's home office. She seemed to understand that her mother was doing something important, even if she couldn't comprehend what it was. Oliver had written several letters to Simone over the months, but she'd returned them all unopened. She'd made peace with what happened, but she didn't need to hear his apologies or explanations. That chapter of her life was closed. The only news about Oliver that reached her came through Patricia, who kept track of his case as a matter of professional interest. "He's been a model prisoner," Patricia told Simone during one of their regular check-ins. "He's enrolled in financial literacy classes and is apparently helping other inmates with their legal paperwork." "Good for him," Simone said without much interest. "I hope he's learning something useful." "He's also been writing to his mother again," Patricia continued. "She's been visiting him once a month. I think she's the only person who still has any contact with him." Simone was glad Oliver wasn't completely alone, for his sake and for Grace's. Someday her daughter might want to know about her father, and it would be better if there was some redemption in his story. But that was a problem for the future. Right now, Simone was focused on the present, which was full of possibilities she'd never imagined when she was married to Oliver. Robert had become a constant presence in their lives, and Grace adored him. He'd been patient and respectful, never pushing for more than Simone was ready to give. But as time passed, it became clear that their relationship was heading towards something permanent. "I know this is complicated," Robert said one evening as they watched Grace play with her toys. "I know you're still healing from everything that happened. But I want you to know that I'm here for the long haul. Whatever you need, whenever you're ready." "I think I'm ready now," Simone said, taking his hand. "I've spent enough time looking backward. It's time to look forward." They were married in a small ceremony 8 months later, with Grace as their flower girl. Amy was Simone's maid of honor, and Patricia officiated the ceremony. It was nothing like Simone's first wedding, which had been expensive and elaborate. This ceremony was simple and genuine, focused on the love between two people who had found each other in the aftermath of betrayal. "I promise to always tell you the truth," Robert said during his vows. "Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, I will never lie to you." "I promise to trust you with my heart," Simone replied, "and to never let fear keep me from love." As they exchanged rings, Simone thought briefly about Oliver, alone in his prison cell. She hoped he was finding peace and redemption, but she no longer carried the weight of his choices. His downfall had been complete, but it had also been necessary. Grace clapped her hands as her mother and new father kissed, not understanding the significance of the moment but sensing the happiness around her. She was growing up surrounded by love and honesty, which was all Simone had ever wanted for her. The past was truly behind them now. Oliver's downfall had been the end of one story, but it had also been the beginning of another. And this new story was full of hope. 2 years later, Simone stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office, watching the city bustle below. Second Chance's Financial had grown beyond her wildest dreams, now employing 6 other consultants and serving clients across 3 states. The success still surprised her sometimes, but she'd learned to accept that good things could happen to people who worked hard and made brave choices. "Mama, up." Grace called from her corner of the office, where she was building towers with colorful blocks. At 2.5, she was a confident, talkative child who brought joy to everyone she met. "Just a minute, baby girl," Simone said, finishing her review of a case file. She was helping a woman whose husband had been hiding assets in cryptocurrency, and the investigation was particularly complex. Grace had Robert's eyes now, or at least that's what everyone said. The adoption had been finalized 6 months ago, and Grace had started calling Robert Daddy, without any prompting from the adults in her life. It was as if she'd always known he was meant to be her father. "Family meeting in 5 minutes, Robert announced, poking his head into the office. He was carrying their newest addition, baby James, who was 6 months old and had his father's calm temperament. "What's the meeting about?" Simone asked, scooping up Grace and settling her on her hip. "You'll see," Robert said with a mysterious smile. They gathered in the conference room, which had become their informal family meeting space. Grace sat in her special chair, swinging her legs and babbling to her baby brother. James gurgled happily in Robert's arms, reaching for Grace's outstretched fingers. "I have an announcement," Robert said formally. "I've been offered a partnership in a consulting firm in Seattle. It's a great opportunity, but it would mean moving the family." Simone's heart skipped. "Seattle? That's across the country." "I know it's a big change," Robert continued, "but I've been thinking about it and I think it could be good for all of us. New city, new opportunities, fresh start." "What about my business?" Simone asked. "I can't just leave my clients." "Actually, you can," Robert said, pulling out a folder. "I've been doing some research. There's a huge demand for your services in Seattle. The market there is underserved, and you could probably double your business within 2 years." Simone looked at the documents Robert had prepared. He'd done his homework, researching everything from office space to local legal requirements. "You've been planning this for a while." "I've been thinking about it," Robert admitted. "Ever since James was born, I've been thinking about giving our family a completely fresh start. Somewhere with no memories of the past, where we can just be ourselves." Grace looked up from her blocks. "Go bye-bye." "Maybe, sweetheart," Simone said. "We're talking about it." That evening, after the children were asleep, Simone and Robert sat on their balcony overlooking the city lights. It was the same view Simone had once shared with Oliver, but everything about her life was different now. "Tell me what you're really thinking," Robert said. "I'm thinking about how much I love our life here," Simone said. "But I'm also thinking about how much I trust you. If you think Seattle is right for our family, then I'm willing to consider it." "It's not just about the business opportunity," Robert said. "It's about giving Grace and James a chance to grow up somewhere where their story isn't defined by what happened to you before they were born." Simone understood. Here, she would always be the woman whose husband went to prison. In Seattle, she could just be Simone Harrison, successful businesswoman and loving mother. "When would we move?" she asked. "Summer," Robert said. "That gives us time to transition your clients and find the right office space in Seattle." "And you're sure about this?" "About uprooting everything we've built here." Robert took her hand. "I'm sure about us," he said. "The location doesn't matter as much as the family we're building together." 3 months later, they were packing up their lives for the move to Seattle. Grace helped by putting her toys in boxes, chattering constantly about the airplane they would take to their new home. James watched everything with curious eyes, too young to understand the significance of the change. As they sorted through their belongings, Simone found a box of items from her marriage to Oliver. She kept them not out of sentiment but because they were part of her history. There were wedding photos, legal documents, and a few letters from Oliver that she'd never opened. "What do you want to do with these?" Robert asked gently. Simone looked at the box for a long moment. I think it's time to let them go, she said finally. Grace might want to know about her biological father someday, but she doesn't need to carry the weight of his mistakes. They donated the photos to a program that helped formerly incarcerated people reconnect with their families. The legal documents went to Patricia, who was helping other women navigate similar situations. The unopened letters went in the trash, their contents no longer relevant to Simone's life. On their last night in the city, Simone received an unexpected phone call. It was Agent Chin, whom she hadn't spoken to in over a year. I wanted to let you know that Oliver Crawford was released on parole this morning, Agent Chin said. He served 4 years of his sentence and was granted early release for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations. Simone felt a flutter of anxiety. Is he coming here? No, Agent Chin assured her. Part of his parole agreement is that he can't contact you or Grace without your permission. He's been placed in a halfway house in another state, and he's required to check in with his parole officer regularly. How is he doing? Simone asked, surprised by her own curiosity. Better than expected, Agent Chin said. He completed several education programs in prison and has a job lined up at a nonprofit that helps people with financial literacy. He seems genuinely changed. I'm glad, Simone said, and she meant it. I hope he's learned from his mistakes. He asked me to tell you something, Agent Chin continued. He said he's grateful for the photo you sent of Grace when she was born, and he doesn't expect anything else from you. He said he hopes you found happiness. Tell him I have, Simone said. And tell him I wish him well. After hanging up, Simone told Robert about the call. He listened without judgment, understanding that her concern for Oliver came from compassion, not lingering attachment. Are you okay? Robert asked. I'm perfect, Simone said. Knowing that he's trying to rebuild his life makes me feel like everything came full circle. Justice was served, but mercy was possible too. The next morning they boarded the plane to Seattle. Grace pressed her face to the window, excitedly pointing out the clouds below. James slept peacefully in Simone's arms, oblivious to the significance of the journey. As the plane lifted off, Simone thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed her had ultimately led to a life better than anything she'd imagined. She'd found her strength, built a successful business, and created a family based on love and honesty. New adventure, Grace announced, clapping her hands. New adventure, Simone agreed, kissing her daughter's forehead. Below them, the city grew smaller and smaller until it was just a memory. Ahead of them lay Seattle, full of possibilities and new beginnings. Simone closed her eyes and felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. The past was truly behind them now. The future was bright and full of promise. And for the first time in years, Simone felt completely at peace. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, Grace fell asleep against her mother's shoulder, dreaming of new playgrounds and new friends. James stirred slightly in his sleep, then settled back into contentment. Robert reached over and took Simone's hand, squeezing it gently. Ready for our new life? He whispered. More than ready, Simone whispered back. And as they flew toward their future, Simone knew that sometimes the best thing that could happen to you was having your old life fall apart completely. It made room for something infinitely better to take its place.